Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for those that have joined us. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Someone just give me a nod just to make sure that audio is coming through. Um, Welcome to this Digital Cumbria webinar. Thank you for joining us. You're all very welcome. And just a quick shout out before we move on to the Federation of Small Businesses. Thank you for hosting this event and having us here this morning. The FSB do a lot. They offer a lot of support for businesses across the UK, and we're really happy to be working with them, and hopefully to be able to do more events like this in the future. So thank you for having us. And so for those of you that have joined us this morning, we're talking all things digital, and hopefully we're going to be able to give you a little bit of insight into the prevalence of digital technology today, what it's doing for businesses, and why really you need to be embracing it if you're going to continue to survive as a business, but also grow, prosper, future-proof, and be able to move forward. Quick introduction, my name's Wayne Willis. I'm one of the partners and consultants at Adenic Group. I'm joined by my colleague, Jamie Del Grosso, who's going to be taking you through today's presentation, and my other colleague, Rob Lewis. Basic background is Adenic Group are an innovation consultancy. We work with brands home and abroad to help them develop innovation within their own business and come up with new ideas, different ways of thinking about how they deliver their business. And a strong element of that is through digital technology and understanding what digital capabilities are available and how you can use them to then further develop your business. Particularly prevalent subject now, of course, because of the time that we're in. Many businesses, large or small, regardless of your sector, are struggling to some extent because you're not able to operate as you normally would have been over the last couple of years. So you have to think differently about the way that you deliver your offer, or the nature of your offer, and maybe you need to pivot that somewhat using the skills and the capabilities you've got to try and look into different areas and different values for your customer. And a key component of that is going to be digital technology, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So we'll be going through some of the basics of digital technology, what it means to be a digital business, and how you can adapt. I am quite aware that some people on the call will be quite knowledgeable about digital and will have used it and be very aware of it. And there'll be some people that are on this call that maybe are really just dipping their toe into this in its sort of first steps. So we're trying to build a bit of a happy medium, and we'll kind of go through it, to try and cover both bases. But what I would say is just ask us questions really throughout. We try to make these interactive as possible. So there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Send us questions throughout, and we'll try and answer them and try and tailor our answers more to the nature of your business. And the other thing I would say, some of the examples we'll be giving, is to try and give context. So we'll be showing you some sort of larger brands and big examples of people using technology advantageously, but the principle applies even down to a very, very small business, or a one-person business on a high street, or a hairdressers, or whatever it might be. The principles are all applicable. So hopefully that will all make sense. At the end of the webinar, I'll give you just a little bit of information about what Digital Tech Cumbria, sorry, words twisting, Digital Tech Cumbria is all about, and the support you can get from them, and why you need to get involved. With that, I think we'll move on and get into the presentation. So Jamie, I'll hand over to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Wayne. Hi, guys. As Wayne said, the purpose of today is to go through the digital industry, how people are developing digital products. But what we've tried to do is keep it as top level as possible. So if you are new to the idea of embracing digital for your business, we'll hopefully give you some understanding of that and give you some tools that will help you understand that a little bit better. And if you are already embracing digital or looking at creating digital services, then hopefully through today we'll give you some tools and some frameworks that may help with that development and producing further digital technologies. But if there's any specific things that you want to know about for your business or for your needs, like Wayne said, just drop us a message through the Q&A, through the chat box, and I'll try and tailor what I'm saying throughout to what you're asking. So as Wayne mentioned, we are from a company called the Adenic Group. So Adenic Group is an innovation consultancy, and we help brands all over the world to develop new innovation products and strategies And the way that we do this is by asking them to embrace what we call the 3Ds, our three core principles, which are to be disruptive, think differently, and embrace digital. So just before we get into sort of the nitty gritty of what we're going to go through, I want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we're talking about embrace digital and the power of digital and how it's changing the business landscape. So when we're talking about using digital technology, what we're talking about is the use of any physical or virtual technology, so hardware or software, to aid in a function or operation. So it's using these digital tools to help you do what you do better. It doesn't particularly mean that you have to change everything that you're doing. It doesn't mean that you have to stop your core business model or what you're doing right now. It just means embracing this digital technology to help it, help you do it faster, more efficiently, save money or make more money. So just to put that into context and how digital has changed the business landscape, if we go back to sort of prior to this digital revolution, and we look at a business of significant scale, in order to have a business that had a really significant reach and a significant growth, you would need to look something like this. You would need to have lots of infrastructure, lots of people doing lots of jobs, and a lot of resources and money in order to grow to that level. Now, with today's technology, that same business with that same growth and that same reach could look something like this. So what we're seeing is through digital technology, people are able to create very successful businesses and grow them very quickly using very basic resources, in some cases just using a laptop or a computer somewhere. So it's really changing how people are starting businesses. And also for businesses that aren't embracing digital, it means that there are more disruptors in the marketplace. So there are now more people in the marketplace that can disrupt your business and disrupt what you're doing, because it's so much easier and cheaper for them to come up with this idea and enter the marketplace thanks to digital technology. So it's really worth bearing that in mind while we go through these slides, because we're not just talking about something that is a nicety for the future. And even if we take out the whole situation with the pandemic, it's also to build resilience. It's also to help your company become less disrupted by other companies that may come about using digital technology. So this funny looking example here is from a computer system called Google DeepMind. So Google DeepMind is a machine learning computer. And a machine learning computer is a computer system that is able to figure out its own answers to questions and challenges it's asked. So with traditional AI, it can give you a series of predefined answers. So someone has already given it a series of answers based on questions and challenges it may be given. With machine learning, it's able to determine these itself through various types of computing. So in this scenario, Google gave Google DeepMind a humanoid figure and said, can you figure out the quickest way to get this humanoid figure from point A to point B with no other information? So it hadn't seen the mechanics of a human walking. It wasn't aware of what this may look like. And within 3 hours, it was able to figure out and understand the mechanics of walking and move this humanoid figure through this obstacle course. Now, if we look at how long, over that time period, 3 hours for something to figure out and understand the mechanics of walking, when we compare that to how long it would take a human to understand the mechanics of walking, that is an extremely fast amount of time for this computer to solve this problem. And these technologies are becoming more widespread. So actually you can access these machine learning computers and deep thinking computers now, and you can actually integrate them into apps and things. So we're moving into a world where we actually have computers that are able to determine operations and functions and solutions much more quickly than we can. So this is already starting to change how we do things and starting to change the business landscape, but it's still at its infancy, and there's still a lot further that this can go and a lot more that we can grow. So This graph is from a bit of research that was done by a company called The Emerging Future, and they look at how they think technology will affect us in the future and how we will grow using technology. And what they looked at is looking at the growth of technology that we have nowadays. In the next 5 years, they predicted that we will be 32 times more technologically advanced than we are today. Now, they put this down to the technology that we are creating now is actually helping us create the next wave of technology. So we're actually creating this snowball effect where the more technology and digital services we develop, the more digital services and technologies are then being developed off the back of them and with the new learning and knowledge that have come from those technologies. So they then took this figure, this prediction, and they spread that over a further period of time and said, if that trend carries on, if we are developing these technologies that are then aiding us in developing further technology, what will happen over the next 10 years? And when they followed that same formula over the next 10 years, they figured out that we would be 1,000 times more technologically advanced, and over 20 years, 1,000,000 times more advanced. Now, this looks like a very steep curve and quite a shocking number, but if we consider how quickly we're developing technology already and the changes that those have had on our lives, then it actually doesn't seem as dramatic as it may appear on the graph. So to give an example to that, this is the first touchscreen phone that was developed. It's the Simon by IBM, and this came out in 1991. Now, looking at this compared to the phones and the digital devices we have nowadays, this looks very primitive and very simple. But this was the first iteration of a touchscreen phone that was released for consumer use. Now, if you look forward 30 years to where we are now and look at the phones that we have nowadays, the power these phones have, how much we actually use them to live our lives and how widespread they are, you can really see that in what is really quite a short period, how quickly those have changed. And we now have a situation where there's people running entire businesses just using mobile phones when they're out and about. People can use them for just about anything they need to. And it's actually become probably one of the most embedded and influential bits of tech that we've ever seen. And when we consider the impacts it's had in 30 years, that is a very significant growth in quite a short time. And if we look at a newer technology, so if we look at the example here of virtual reality, the concept of virtual reality has actually been around for a very long time, but consumer products that allow you to access virtual reality experiences are actually a very new thing. They've only been around for the last couple of years. And what we're seeing already is, even in the last few years that we've had this technology around, the difference that this has made on certain industries and the growth that we've had because of it. So this example is someone using virtual reality for engineering. So by using this platform, they are able to simulate and practice designing and building various machines and things without the cost that is associated with actually building this in the real world. So this is allowing them to try more things, try them more quickly, and develop things more quickly. So even in a very short space of time, just a few years that this has been used in on an industry level, we're seeing massive change because of it. So what we can see is, as the technologies are being released, the adoption period and then the period of where it starts to impact business, it starts to impact our lives, is becoming shorter and shorter. So as we go forward into the future, that trend is likely to continue, and we're likely to see technologies that come about and have much more quicker, a much more dramatic effect on the way we live and on our businesses. So that, I just wanted to go through that just to explain kind of the power of digital and why it's important, and what the future of digital may look like. But now what we're going to do is go through some of the fundamentals of what the digital industry is, how to understand it, and how to develop or understand digital products. So as we said at the start, this will be very top level and kind of basic, but we'll try to sort of give enough information so that if you are new to the digital industry, you don't really understand it very well, hopefully you will. And if you are looking at developing digital products, already have, hopefully there's some useful tools in here for you. So the first thing to understand is the new trend of the digital first consumer. So in all industries, what people are seeing is consumers that use digital as their first check, if you like, of a brand. So the first interaction with the brand. So if someone recommends a company to you or a service, for most people, the first thing that you will do is you will go online and you'll check up on that company. You will have a look on their website or their social medias, and you'll look at the work I've done before. The same is being applied to all different industries. So retail, if people like products, even if they see it in a shop, a lot of people are now not buying it at that moment and then going home and actually looking at it online, or they're looking at it on large e-commerce sites like Amazon. So the consumer is becoming much more digital first and digital aware, which means that businesses that want to keep relevant and keep having that connection with consumers also need to start considering the digital first approach. So when we talk about digital first, a few things to consider. The first, and probably the most obvious, is social media. So we're now seeing social media become one of the most influential platforms that we have. We're seeing its influence in business, in politics, in the way people are living their lives, in various other forms. So for any business, social media is now becoming a must. And we're actually seeing that this is shown in the reports and the analytics that people are collecting. And that 43% of consumers are now more likely to buy a product if they've learnt about it from social media. So it's actually, people are using this almost as a way of reputation management, of checking out a company, seeing if they want to buy products, if the company is reputable and is going to give them a good service. 74% of consumers are relying on social media to guide their purchases. So as I said, even if they see that product elsewhere, a lot of consumers are then going back to social media or going back to online platforms to double check before they purchase. So that even if they're not seeing it through social media first, they're still using it as a reference tool. And 60% of SMBs say that they've gained new customers through social media. So we've spoken about retail, but not just retail. All companies, regardless of your industry, a lot of people are gaining new clients or new leads through social media and through connecting with people online. So it's, I think, a fundamental for any brand now is to look at an online presence and a digital presence, and look at how you can engage with your customers through that. The next thing to look at is the mobile first consumer. So over the last 7 years, this is actually only going up to 2019. So this will have actually gone up further than this. But over the last 7 years, we've seen mobile traffic grow by 222%. So this is how people are accessing the internet. And actually, this article that this research was from, they actually did a bit of a test where they asked people about their browsing habits and how they were using the internet. And what they did is actually ask people a question that they need to use the internet to solve. And even people that were sat at a computer, sat at a desk, when asked to Google something, to search for something, or to get an answer for something, they took the phones out of the pocket and used the Google on the phone, even though they were sat at a computer. So there's people that, even though they were sat at a physical desktop device, still chose to use the phone because that felt more natural to them. That was their instinct. The first thing they did when someone said to search for something was to get the phone out of the pocket. And actually, we're not just seeing a growth in it, we're actually seeing mobile traffic overtake desktop usage worldwide. So in various areas of the world, so for a lot of our customers and end users, actually they will be mobile first anyway, so we'll see much higher numbers if we just looked at a regional area. But worldwide, we're actually seeing that everywhere people are using less and less desktop devices and more mobile. And actually, this data I could only find up to 2016, but actually this data now will be much higher. So mobile users have far exceeded desktop users, and the trend keeps going. So we're seeing people year on year use desktops less and use mobiles more. And with the new series of phones and tablets and things coming out, which are more powerful and people are able to actually do more production work on, we'll just see this trend grow. So it's worth considering for anything that we are looking at when it comes to digital, that our consumers may not be looking at it in the same way that we've created it. If we've created tools and digital services for a desktop device, actually that's going to be a minority of the people that are using it. And actually the majority of people that use our services and digital products will be using it on a mobile. So it's something that we need to be aware of, and need to understand how we interact with users that are using mobiles and how we are presenting ourselves on these platforms. And the final thing to take into account is ecosystems, so digital ecosystems. The new digital customer is much more ecosystem aware than anyone has ever been in the past in terms of how we embrace digital. So when we're talking about ecosystems, what we're talking about is these technology products that are kind of grouped together and work together. So if we look at, in this scenario, I've put Amazon. So for anyone that has an Echo device, an Amazon Echo device, you will know that if you are looking at, for example, a bit of home technology for your house, and you have that system, you will get one that works with that system. But even on a more simple level, if you have an iPhone or a Mac instead of a PC, if you're looking at a new product for that system, you're going to look at something that is integrated with that system. So if you have a Mac, you're more likely to have an iPhone. If you have an iPhone, you're more likely to have an iWatch. And you're more likely to use iTunes than another platform like Spotify. So by creating these ecosystems, you're actually creating something where we're almost locking that consumer into that community and keeping them in that brand community, so that when they're looking at new purchasing options, they're going to look at something that works with that platform. They're going to look at something that fits in with the ecosystem they're already building around them. So it's one thing to consider when it comes to services that you may be creating or looking at, and would they integrate with existing ecosystems? But also, is it possible to create digital ecosystems through your own efforts and through your own services? So those are a few of the trends that the digital consumers are looking at. So that is the people that are looking at adopting digital, whether that is your end user, your consumer, or even your own businesses. So maybe you're looking at putting more digital services in place internally for your business. Those are a few things that are worth considering. But what I wanted to do is essentially break down what a digital product is. So when you're talking about digital product or service, there's a lot of kind of technical language and things that can come around that, which a lot of people can be confused by. And actually just getting started with developing a digital product, or even just understanding how digital products are made, can be confusing if it's something that you're not aware of or it's something you haven't done before. So what we've done is essentially broken down what the anatomy of that means and tried to put it in a way that is easy to understand. So if you are having a conversation with someone about a digital service, you may understand better some of the things they're saying. If you're already aware of some of this, and it may seem a bit basic for you, then hopefully what we can do is actually put that into some kind of framework, and actually you may find this useful for development processes. So when we're talking about a digital product, now this could be anything. This could be an app, this could be software, a website, anything that is a digital platform. There's normally three key areas that we're looking at, three things that make up the anatomy of that product. So the first is storage. Now, storage is essentially your data, where your data is stored, how your data is stored, the databases you're using. And this really provides the value to your product. So for example, if you are Just Eat and you are showing people takeaways, that storage would be the database of all those takeaways and all the items that they sell. So without that, without the data, essentially what you've got is just an empty shell of a product. The storage is where all of the key value is stored, and probably the most valuable part of any product, and the bit that needs securing and protecting the most. Then the storage, so all that data is then sent to the back end of a website or an app. So if you ever talk to a developer, you may hear these terms a lot, the front end and the back end. And just to put that into a basic concept so you understand the difference between them. The back end of a digital product is essentially the bit you don't see. So it's a bit behind the scenes. And the purpose of the back end of any digital product is it's to create the functionality. It's to tell that product or service what to do. So if a consumer clicks on this button, what is the process? What do I do? And what is the result? So this tends to be what coding languages you're using or the infrastructure that you're using to put it together, any other services that you're pulling in and using as part of your service. But this is all the bit that you don't really get to see, or the consumer doesn't get to see. Then once those processes have been determined using that data from the storage, it's then sent to the front end. So the front end is essentially the user interface, so what we call the UI, and this is the pretty bit that you interact with. This is the design. So for a website, it's the visuals that you see on the website. It's the experience you get when you click on the website. For an app, it's what you see on screen and you're interacting with. So this is where the user is interacting, and this is where the user is understanding how to control that back end to get the information they want from that storage. So just to put that into a different example, if we take the example of a car, the storage would essentially be the fuel for that car. It's the thing that makes it move. Without it, it wouldn't do anything. So the storage is always kind of it's the thing that adds momentum to what we're doing. The back end would be the inner workings of that car. So it would be the wheels and the engine and the thing that actually gives it function. It's one of the most important parts of it, but it's the bit we don't really often see. It's kind of hidden behind everything else. The front end is essentially the pretty bit, but it's also, for a consumer's point of view, the thing that will help them determine whether it's the right product for them, whether they will buy into that product. So when you consider the example of a car, the first thing most people will look at and make an initial decision on is the build of the car, is the look of the car. And the same goes for digital products. The very first thing people will look at is their initial experience with it and their interaction with it, because that's the bit that has value to them. And finally, we have something called the UX. So the UX is the user experience. So if you ever hear the terms UI and UX, UI is the user interface, that's the actual design. UX, the user experience, is really, it's more the psychology of how things are laid out. So is it easy to use? If there's an important part of that app I need to access, can I access it quickly? And can I intuitively look at that design and understand what I need to do to get to the area that I need to get to? So it's really about creating something that is easy to understand and easy to use for the user. So we compare this to the insides of a car. This is essentially the mechanism that allows a user to understand how to operate everything that's behind that shell, how to operate the back end, and how to get the data they need, or in this case, how to drive the car, how to actually make it move forward. So as good as a platform may be, if we don't get that user experience right and that user interface, then you are much less likely to get buy-in from users, because they will find it too difficult to use, or they won't enjoy the experience. And therefore, the bit that has value to them, which is the interaction with the app, is lessened. So they will see less value in the platform, or website, whatever it may be, and will be less likely to use it. So that's the basic anatomy of a digital product. I appreciate if anyone is aware of how to develop, and or there's people in here that are developing their own solutions, that may seem very basic, but hopefully it's something that gives you guys some insights and maybe gives some information. The next thing that I want to go through is identifying consumer needs. So the first step in developing a digital product is always to identify the consumer needs or wants. And the reason we do this is the digital landscape itself is very, very noisy. So for every consumer need or want you can think of, there is a whole army of apps and websites and digital services often offering the same thing. There's a phrase, there's an app for that people use to, say that there's an app to do pretty much anything you need. But there really is. It's the digital landscape is very oversaturated. So in order to build a successful digital product, you actually need to think a little bit more in depth and a bit more intelligently about how you're putting that service together and where the value of it is. So one way that companies are doing this is essentially by following a fairly basic formula of essentially identifying a consumer need, adding some form of digital innovation to that, and then once they have that product, because those two things essentially create the core of the product, they are then looking at how to get early adoption. And early adoption is one of the key ways to really get a product out there and to actually get it noticed amongst peers and similar companies. So if we can get these three things right, then in theory, we have the formula for successful digital delivery. So first of all, if we break those down, how do we address a consumer need? So we have what we call the 5 E's of consumer needs. And these are the sort of basic, the basic areas that consumers are looking at. So this will cover most needs or wants for a consumer. And these are ease, entertainment, economic, education, and ecosystem. So just to explain what those mean briefly. So when we're talking about ease, what we're talking about is making things more efficient or easy to use for the consumer. So this could be taking something that people use already, but they may find it quite complicated or quite difficult to use, and putting it into a simpler platform. It could be adding functionality so that the user has better control or more features, or just something as basic as a more friendly user experience and a more friendly user interface. So there's actually lots of examples where people have released products that at the core are very good products and they've got a very good idea to them, but essentially the user experience just wasn't there. It didn't look up to the same quality of some of these more higher end platforms. And someone's essentially come along, duplicated that, and then just put a nicer user interface on it. And that's become the industry normal. So ease has become a massive part of the consumer need identification. The next is entertainment. For business, maybe not so much, but the purpose of entertainment is looking at adding that element of excitement or enjoyment to a platform. So this could be a platform that delivers that itself through things like Netflix, for example, is a platform that delivers entertainment value to consumer. Or it could be taking a process or a system that maybe isn't as enjoyable and adding something to it to make it a little bit more enjoyable. So if we take, for example, a Fitbit, so the smartwatches that most people or a lot of people wear, they're adding, through tracking steps and things, they're able to add goals and challenges throughout the day to encourage people to be more active. But that's also adding an entertainment value to it, because it's almost gamifying and adding that element of excitement to that process. So entertainment value is a great way to add value to a consumer and address a consumer need. Economics should be the obvious one, is people like stuff cheap. So if you can find a way to deliver that product at a cheaper cost to the consumer, obviously that is a much more attractive proposition to a consumer. But also what we're seeing is that people are not just looking for a cheaper option. Sometimes they're looking for alternative payment systems. So there's a large trend at the moment of people moving across to subscription-based businesses over one-off payments. So even if in the long run they may be paying more for that platform or that service, the consumers nowadays will actually prefer to pay through a payment subscription where they can just put in their bank details or use Google Pay or Apple Pay and automatically be charged a small fee every month for a service. So if you have services or products that are maybe using one form of profit model, maybe it's a one-off payment or something, you can look at alternative payment methods that may fit in with a consumer's current economic needs and wants. The next is education. And when we talk about education, we're not just talking about education in the form of training. We're talking about providing the users with new information or access to data, and then looking at things like gamifying that data or adding more value and knowledge to the data. So examples, like I mentioned earlier, with the Fitbit is a great example of that. They've essentially taken a basic step counter and then tied that with other information and put it onto a simple display. So you're able to see how many steps you've done, how many calories that equates to, goals and things like that. And then they've added an element of competition by allowing you to also integrate with maybe friends or family members that have the same device. So you can compare steps and almost create a leaderboard. So Fitbit has arguably done more for health than many tech products have over the last 10, 15 years. Despite the fact Fitbit actually doesn't do anything directly to impact or improve health. Fitbit purely provides you with information about your own activities, and then that allows the user to, with that knowledge, make better choices or make more informed choices of how they're living or their activity. So being able to provide information and knowledge to a consumer is becoming a much more attractive proposition for consumers. Actually, it's something that a lot of people are looking for now, and especially in a business landscape, if you are looking at products for yourself, the idea of information and access to data and metrics is huge and really gives you insights into how you can run your business better or more efficiently. And the final thing is ecosystem. So we've already kind of touched upon this, but users want something that integrates with the systems and the ecosystems they've already got. So is it possible to take the idea that they've got, that service, that product, and tie it into an existing ecosystem, or could it be the foundation of its own ecosystem? So these are the 5 consumer needs or consumer wants that you can look at and will apply to almost any industry, any demographic of consumer. You can sort of look at much further into all of these and sort of develop your own, but what we found is these 5 tend to cover just about everybody. And if you can look at ways to address these, so if you can address a need or a want in any of these areas, then you're essentially creating great insight for developing a product. And actually, if you can take multiple consumer needs and tie them together, then you can really take that product into overdrive and really create something that has great adoption and does really well. So again, as I mentioned earlier, Fitbit, I already mentioned 2 of the consumer needs that they'd addressed, and we all know how successful that is. But if you look at some of the most successful tech and digital products out there, what you'll find is that actually they touch upon maybe 2, 3, or even 4 of these consumer needs. And that is why they had such great adoption. And then the second step in that formula was to add a type of digital innovation to that need or want to develop a new product. So this is the bit where a lot of people get stuck if you're not used to development of digital products, because the idea of developing something digital could actually seem quite daunting. There's quite a lot you can do with digital tools and a lot of things you can create. So what we've essentially done is broken down the various types of digital innovation and the different ways digital can be used. So you can take one of those needs and apply one of these types of innovation, and that will very quickly sort of kickstart any ideation at how you could develop new products or new services. So the first and the most common is automation. So when we're talking about automation, we're talking about allowing computers and algorithms and software to essentially do some of the more administrative, menial or repetitive jobs that we may need to do as part of our business, or allowing consumers to automate processes and things that they do themselves. So a good example of this, and I'm sure most people are using something similar for if you're a small business, is Xero. So for those that don't know, Xero is a cloud-based accounting system, and this basically allows you to add your bank accounts directly to this system and then record all your invoices through this system, and basically it will automate a huge amount of your bookkeeping and accounts. There's still some human intervention needed, but essentially the process of running the company's accounts using a system like this is much quicker and much more efficient because of the tools and the systems built in to help you than it would be if you did it sort of through paper and spreadsheets. So this is a very common form of automation where you're essentially taking tasks and putting them into a digital platform that can give you tools and things to speed that process up. But there's also platforms like Babylon. So the idea of Babylon is essentially it's a GP on your phone. So with NHS waiting lists getting longer and I mean, situation now aside, this platform basically allowed people to get access to a diagnosis for various ailments at home using telemedicine. So basically, the user was able to type in a question, type in a query into the app. So in this case, it says, I have a headache. And then basically, the Babylon app will then respond to them and ask them various questions. Now, actually, the first few steps of this app are actually an AI bot that is controlling a lot of it. So if you say, I've got a headache, it already knows that there's 4 or 5 questions that any GP would need to ask to determine the seriousness of your condition or whatever it is that may be wrong with you. So it will automatically ask 2 or 3 questions, and then based on those answers, it will determine some form of diagnosis or suggestion, or it may put them in touch with a medical professional through a video call on the phone. So this system is allowing doctors and GPs to automate a lot of their process, simplify it, which means less time spent for them. So they've got more time to see other patients. And it's also creating a bit of an ecosystem. So while Babylon have this app that you can download and access, they've also started adding additional products and services. So they released the health kit. So for people that want a bit more of an in-depth diagnosis or for various other things, they can send this out, which is obviously an additional cost, which comes through the post. And within it are things to help you diagnose yourself better and get more insight into what your ailment may be. So this is a great example of looking at a need that probably everyone was aware of the pressure on GPs and doctors. And then someone's essentially just created a way to automate this, simplify it, and they're obviously making money from that. And now they're looking at how they can turn that into an ecosystem. So this ecosystem is growing.
Yeah, Jamie, can I just add something there? Just
yes.
on the automation bit. like if you want to just make this more relatable, particularly if you're a very small business, if you've got like a Facebook page, so if you're a hair salon and you're you've got a business page on Facebook, you can have this just in your chat. So when people go to your page, Facebook have an like a bot that can pop up in the chat message that asks the visitor questions, which is what time does your salon open? Do you do colors? Is there a way, whatever the question might be, and you can already set the answers for all of those things. So you're providing all the value to the consumer when they're coming to you without actually having to do any of the work. For the most part, you won't even know that they've been there until they actually take the next step of, you might put in like book an appointment or book a consultation or something like that. And then again, something like Facebook enables you to do that, to book in a calendar appointment and, to be able to come to your salon. So I just wanted to touch upon that really, just to say that whilst we're talking about the development of digital products and making new things, and all the stuff Jamie's talking about here is obviously to try and outline how these things work and how we as consumers think. A lot of this stuff already exists. You're using it pretty much every single day, likely on your phones, etc. And really, it's just reapplying it to your business function. So most of this stuff and the further stuff that Jamie's going to talk about, you'll find it already exists, and it's just reapplying it for you. So you don't even have to develop anything new or come up with, and you don't have to build anything to some extent. Most of it is done for you. So it's more about embracing it and understanding what its value is. I just wanted to add that, Jamie. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I will touch upon the fact that there is kind of an app for everything already, and how to actually discover some of these apps. But actually what we can do is almost reverse engineer some of the things we've said earlier. So we're talking about how to develop a platform that is useful for a consumer, but actually for yourself as well. If you've got certain pain points within your business, things that you think you could be doing better, or things that have taken up a lot of your time, it's possible to look at essentially the consumer needs with you as the consumer. So what would make it better? As Wayne said, maybe people sending you a message on Facebook is taking up a lot of your time, and you're actually spending too much time doing that and not enough time on your core business function. Then that consumer need you need is that ease, is to remove that and to make it simpler. So you can then look at various types of automation or various types of digital innovation, and then look for a platform that offers that. So a platform that offers ease through automation. And again, I'll show you some ways to find these platforms. But yeah, if it's something you want to apply to your own business, you can do that. You can look at these types of automation, types of innovation, and look at how they may benefit you and your process and your internal workings.
Yeah, and just one other thing is just going back to those 5 E's as well, the consumer needs. As you say, if you put yourself in the consumer's position, then obviously you can sort of see, yeah, if you was the person buying from you, what would make life easier. And I don't know why I keep harping on about hair salons. For some reason, I've got it in my head. But like, if you was in that position, if you think back to when we was in the full-on lockdown and nobody could get a haircut, I think we can all pretty much relate to that. So people were trying to cut their own hair and figure out how to like manage it at home themselves. Now, a service that a hair salon could provide when they're unable to cut hair would be to offer insight in what you could do to manage your hair at home. So that would be using something like YouTube, which is free, it already exists. Maybe as part of that, you could suggest products that they need to be buying to help them do that, the right sort of scissors to use, or the comb, or whatever it might be. And you can build all that into your own ecosystem, which would like connect through to your website, it would connect through to your Facebook channels and your social medias, and you create like an ecosystem of almost education about hair, the best tips for coloring your hair or whatever it might be. That sort of stuff, even that at a most basic level, would be really helpful to me, the consumer who sat at home with scraggy hair and can't get a haircut. So like it can be the most basic of things that can elevate your brand to be adding value beyond your core thing, which is cutting hair, and also attracting more consumers. So when it gets to the point of when they can actually come into your salon, maybe they've already signed up to be on your waiting list, so when it opens they can come and be one of the first to have their hair done or whatever. So even something as basic as that is a consideration.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. So the next type of innovation to look at is information gamification. So we've already touched upon this. The example I gave earlier was the Fitbit. So the way that they are using data and metrics to to inform people and help them make better choices for fitness. But also we're seeing this being used in more internally in business as well. So this is a platform for sales companies, so companies like, maybe call centers or companies that are contacting people to gain leads. And essentially, what this platform does is it's assigning points based on action, so points for making phone calls maybe, or closing deals, or however it's worked out. So this is providing insight. So for the company owners, they're seeing where the value for their company is, they're seeing which one of their staff members is giving them that value. But then for the team members themselves, it's adding an element of what we call gamification. So essentially, when we talk about gamification, in general, what we're talking about is adding competition or some form of engagement or interaction to data and metrics. So in this case, they're essentially creating a leaderboard, so they've made it competitive. So if you're Peter Coffey, who's position 4, and you can see that there's the 3 guys above you, you're going to want to try and push yourself a little bit more to try and beat those people. If you can see that you're only 3 points behind the guy in front of you, then you're more likely to do that extra little bit just to get ahead. So it creates this element of competition, but it also creates a lot of motivation and things. So it's great for internal teams. It doesn't have to be in this particular format. It doesn't have to be based on sales or whatever, but the idea of gamifying things is great for productivity. And it's also great for consumers to gain insights and to gain new knowledge, just as we mentioned with Fitbit and with other platforms. Integration is quite an interesting type of innovation, in the sense that in a lot of scenarios, actually, what you're creating is 90% already done. So the purpose of integration is looking at how you can take things that already exist and bring them together for the ease of the consumer. So, for example, Xero is actually a good example of integration, in the sense that it can take all the things like your online banking, pull that in, and it can take things like your invoicing systems and pull them in, and bring them all together into one place to make your bookkeeping easy. But we're actually seeing this in various forms. So one of the most common at the moment is everyone's looking at kind of smart homes and smart technologies, and the cost of smart technology is becoming very, very cheap now. So people are looking at how they can integrate new things into this smart home ecosystem. So we had things like smart light bulbs and smart plug sockets and whatever else, but we're actually getting to a point now where, you can get smart toasters and smart fridges and whatever else. Things that, may seem almost pointless to some people, but if you already have this ecosystem, if you're someone that is really bought into the idea of a smart house, and you're going to a shop to buy a basic toaster, but you see one for £50 more, but it's a smart toaster, a lot of people will then make that choice and actually go with that, because it's got that integration, integrates with their things, and people like the idea of this interconnected digital ecosystem around them. And also, we're seeing a rise of companies that are essentially just providing this integration. So they're just providing the tools to access this data. So this is an example of a company called Automatic. So Automatic is essentially a little box that you can buy and you plug into your car, and it essentially pulls all the diagnostics data from your car and puts it onto a UI, onto an app, so that you can see that data and maybe get some insights about your car or your driving habits or whatever else. Now, they're not actually providing any of this data or any of this insight. This is something that is built into most modern cars. Most modern cars have the inner workings that to have this data. And if you go to mechanics and things a lot, you may see them plug a laptop in, for example, to pull up some of this diagnostics data. All this company is doing is essentially providing a way for you to read the data that you already have in your car or in your vehicle. So they're charging for you to buy that box to give you access to it. And then they're charging a subscription per month to use the app and have access to the insights that come from that data. So essentially, they found a way to monetize data that already exists. And again, going back to the consumer needs, they've added that element of ease. They've added the pretty UI to it, because as it comes out in its raw format, it's just lots of numbers and letters. They've put it into a pretty easy to understand platform. They've made it enjoyable because they've added certain features and things on there that might make it a bit more entertaining. And they've monetized that, so they're actually doing very well from a platform that essentially just harnesses things that people already have. So this was probably a very simple platform for them to put together, and I'm sure they're making a lot of money from that. Another thing to look at, and this is probably something you've all maybe seen and not even realized, is personalization. So consumers now want a much more personalized approach to technology. They want their apps and their devices and their platforms that they're signed up to be for them. So if we take into account something like Netflix, now Netflix is huge. There is millions and millions of people that have signed up to Netflix, and most of us are all seeing the same kind of programs and the same films, because they have, you know, a limited library. They don't, you know, it's not a never-ending library. But what Netflix have done is to make that a more tailored experience to each person. Is they tailor the recommendations based on what they feel you would like. So you've probably seen, if you're a Netflix user or any similar service, you'll have bits that say sort of, because you watch this, you may like this. You know, the categories and suggestions will change constantly based on your viewing habits. So they're trying to create a more personalized offering from that library based on what they think you would like. But what most people don't realize about Netflix is actually for each program and film, they have 2 or 3 cover photos, so 2 or 3 bits of artwork. So if you can see across the bottom there, we've got 4 different films or TV programs, and each one of them has a cover photo. They have different types in different styles. So they'll have one that maybe looks darker and grittier, one that looks a bit more upbeat and happy, one that's a bit more simplistic and minimal. And based on the type of things you watch and the type of cover arts that you interact with the most, they will actually change the cover art for all the different programs and TV shows to the things they think will appeal to you more, to try and draw you in and try to get you to watch their new programs and films. So actually, beyond the obvious recommendation system that's there, they're actually tailoring the platform in lots of little ways that you won't even notice, but to try and entice you to watch various programs and films. And sometimes you actually can see this happening with, if there's various programs and things that maybe you watch a lot, every now and then you'll see that the cover photo will change. And that's actually them doing a bit of split testing and actually checking every so often, if I change that cover photo to this, would you be more or less likely to watch this program based on what we already know about you? So they're able to then make better predictions for how to get you to watch more. So that's a really clever way of personalizing an experience. And again, this is something that most people are expecting nowadays. And another thing to look at is communication and productivity. Now, this is something that I would suggest that any business, any size, starts looking at. With the situation that we're in now with the pandemic and what's going on, it is a key tool. But actually for managing businesses, for managing small businesses, which is something I've done myself for a long time as well, having the right tools to manage processes, productivity and communication with any team members you've got or clients you've got is a huge time saver and really does help you put your focus into where it needs to be on your business and grow. So for example, there is tools like Slack, which is a great communication tool if you've got various team members, which allows you to communicate and talk. Slack is completely free. And you can integrate all the systems you use into this. So if you've got various apps, maybe you use something like Xero to do your accounts, you can have all the information from Xero sent straight into this. So you can see all that information in one platform and use it to run your business. But even tools like we're using today, the fact that you're all watching this webinar, you're doing that through an online communication tool. So, things like Zoom calls and online chats and things like that. These are all communication tools and ways to simplify that communication process. And in terms of productivity, there's things like project management tools and process management tools and various things that you can use to really structure and simplify the work that you're doing. Now, there's a million different examples, and it will all depend on what business you're in and what type of work you do and who your consumers are. So you will kind of know what would be best for you. But putting in place productivity tools and communication tools, especially with the changing scenario we seem to keep finding ourselves in at the moment, I think is really key. And I would suggest everyone looks at that. If anyone has any particular questions on what that may look like for you, feel free to post that into the chat, into the questions, or we'll give you some information at the end of how you can actually get more support on these types of innovation, how to apply them to your own business. And the final type of innovation is virtualization. So this is kind of the more modern, one of the more modern innovation types that we've seen come about, and probably the more fun example of digital innovation. But this is essentially creating virtual environments or virtual interactions. Anything that is virtual reality or augmented reality would come under virtualization. So just to explain those two concepts, people that aren't aware of the difference and what those mean. Virtual reality would be something like this that we're seeing on screen. So this is an example of someone doing a surgery or training for a surgery using virtual reality. So virtual reality is great for creating completely immersive environments. It takes the user completely out of the environment they're in, and it puts them into a virtual environment where they can interact with it and do various things. So we're seeing this being really useful for things like training in this scenario, where to practice this surgery would be either very risky or very expensive. Using something like virtual reality, they can train in this scenario over and over and over again without the cost and without the risk. And it allows people to maybe do things that would be too costly to experience. So we talked about engineering. We talked about using virtual reality to develop new products. Now, to physically produce a large engine, for example, if you're engineering, if you're engineering things like that, would be very costly. If it goes wrong, it's quite a risk to the business. Doing it through virtual reality means that you can try things, try them fast. If they don't work, you can fail fast, and you can move on without as much repercussions. Augmented reality is what you see through things like Snapchat, if anyone has used or seen people use things like Snapchat, and it's applying kind of a digital overlay to the real world. So this could be for the purposes of entertainment. So for example, with Snapchat, there's filters that can be applied where, sort of silly hats will appear on your photos and things like that. Or it can be used for the purposes of information. So Google have a platform called Google Lens, where you can to get the camera on your phone and look at an item, and Google's AI will detect what that item is and then provide you more information on the item through Google search. So these different types of innovation are really great ways to either completely immerse a user or add an immersive layer to the real world. And depending on what it is you do, there may be some value in that, there may not be. But this is a growing type of innovation and an area that we're seeing a lot of consumer interest. So those are the types of digital innovation, and hopefully you can see how some of those may be used to address some of those consumer needs we spoke about, and how you could sort of take one of those needs and then maybe look at different types of innovation and find solutions, or use it as a way to kickstart some ideation. And as Wayne said, we spoke about some of the kind of bigger examples, just so you could see things that maybe you've seen in your everyday life, and you've seen how bigger companies have applied this sort of process. But that could be done in a much more simplistic way. Even a small type of digital innovation is still a digital innovation. And the final thing, and to me, what I actually think is the most important in understanding the digital landscape and understanding how you can use it for yourself, either as a consumer or as someone that's looking at creating things for the digital landscape, is understanding what else is out there. And there's some really great ways that you can get insights on what the industry is doing and what people are looking at and where the interest is. So the first and probably more analytical way of doing this is through Google Trends. So Google Trends is a completely free website that is offered by Google, and you just go to trends.google.com. And basically what this allows you to do is type in a search term. So type in anything you think people may look for on Google, and it will give you information on how many people are looking for it, what countries and areas and regions have the most activity if people are looking for it, other related search terms, and things like that. So if you was looking at, for example, embracing a particular type of technology, but you wasn't sure if there was enough interest in your consumers for that, you could type that in and you'd see how many people are actually looking at that and how many people are interested in that in a particular region or worldwide. So it's a good way just to get a very top level understanding of interest in various trends and technologies, and various other things. It doesn't even have to be technology. Any search term could be typed into this. So if you're looking at maybe you want to look at consumer needs. Maybe if you think there's a particular pain point for your consumers, you could type that in as a question and it will show you how many people are actually searching for that. So it's just a good way to get a basic understanding of online trends and what people are showing interest in. A more direct way of finding out what's available and digital platforms that are out there is a website called Product Hunt. Now, as someone that looks at innovation regularly, I check Product Hunt nearly every day. And basically the purpose of this website is what they call a beta board. So the idea is when people have developed brand new softwares or new services or anything digital or technology based, they will post it to this website knowing that the other people that are going to this website are interested or part of that landscape, and they're interested in digital. And people can essentially provide feedback and give sort of vote to how much they like a particular product. So it's a great way to get examples of what people are interested in, because you can see the feedback, you can see what people are showing interest in. The other interesting thing is that this platform, this one in particular, started as a way for small companies to get feedback on some of their design, some of their products and get them out there. But actually, this has been adopted by massive tech companies now. So we're now seeing things like Apple are actually, when they create their new operating system or something, they're putting it out on this platform first as an example for you to look at and give feedback on and get an idea of. So it's actually a great way to stay ahead of the curve, because you can actually see some of these technologies before they launch. I think just yesterday, actually, Google announced a brand new product that's yet to be released. That's still just a demo onto this platform, so people could check it out and have a look at it. So it's just a great way to understand what's out there and what's going to be out there in the future. And if it's something that you're interested in, I would definitely suggest using this as a way to keep on top of the industry. Another way to do that is through something like Kickstarter. So Kickstarter, if you're not aware of that as a platform, is something where you can put up your prototype projects or put up projects that you're looking to deliver, and people essentially put money on that project. So they essentially they crowdfund it for you. So they will pre-purchase it, pre-order it, and sign up for that product when it's ready for release. So for me, I think this is a really great way to get more consumer-based insight and to almost get an idea of the value of a product. So where products is mostly the tech industry itself, it is a lot of people that are very immersed in digital. Kickstarter is more general consumer. And with this, because they're putting actual money down, it's not just an upvote, it's not just a like or a comment. They have to put money down to back a project. To me, that's a great way to understand where consumers really do see value and where they'd be willing to place money if that product was a fully functional consumer level product. So it's a fantastic way to get insight into that. And also, if you have a product and you want to gain that insight yourself, it's a great way to start a project and gain some feedback and maybe some early stage funding for it. And finally, tech magazines are a great way to get understanding of what's going on. There is actually loads out there. I put these three because these three tend to be quite well known and also are free. But if you look for online tech magazines, you can only find insights into what's been developed, why it's been developed. It will help you understand the industry. And some of these magazines in particular, things like Tech Insider, are great for people on all levels. So if you have a really good understanding of technology, you will find some value and insight in those articles. If you're still getting to grips with it and maybe you're not at that point where you feel completely comfortable with everything that's been, with all the lingo that's been used, they also do really great jobs at kind of breaking that down and explaining what those things mean and why it's important. So these three in particular are really great for people that maybe need that little bit of extra insight to understand some of the things that have been said and the purposes of them or the value of them. And also, one thing to bear in mind is that all these tech companies that are putting their products onto these platforms, whether it be Product Hunt or a tech magazine, they're doing this normally to get early adopters. So if you remember that process we said at the start, that formula, it was identify a consumer need, add innovation, and then get the early adopters. The reason that people, tech companies are using these platforms is to get people to buy into their products. So what you'll find is if you actually look at these platforms, you can normally get early adopter deals for a lot of these platforms. So sometimes you'll get a platform for completely free before it's launched. You may get massive deals on them. So whether that's a physical product or an app or a new website service or whatever it may be, it's actually a great way to get your hands on some new technology, normally at a good price, or even for free. And again, stay ahead of what's going on and get yourself some new tools and new platforms. Also, if you are developing your own services, these are great ways to get your services out there and to get those early adopters. So it kind of works on both sides depending on where you and your business are at. And finally, we've spoken about kind of how to understand all these things, how to identify your needs, how to determine what that product may be or look like, or how to identify products that may be right for you in your business. And the final thing I want to go through, we're going to go through this at a very top level because you can get really in depth with this, is the development process. What I want to do is essentially go through a framework. So a very simple framework to follow if you are a developer that will help you develop successful digital products. But if you're not, if you're someone that's just interested in knowing more about digital, it will break down the process so that it may be easy for you to understand. So if you're talking to someone about development or digital products, you can understand a little bit better how that process is run, and it just aids in kind of those conversations and understanding of what it is. So a couple of trends that are worth knowing, a couple of terms you may hear if you're talking to developers or people that are developing digital products. So the first is mobile first development. And this goes back to the slides we said at the beginning. So previously, especially with things like websites, the way that things have always worked is you design on a desktop and then you look at ways to kind of condense that and make it responsive so it works on a mobile device or whatever other device a user may be using. With certain services and platforms now, you are almost guaranteed that the majority of users will be mobile first. So for things like if you're developing an app, you are designing mobile first, designing something that works on a mobile, and then you're looking at how to adapt it to a bigger screen. So you're kind of just flipping the process. So whenever someone talks about mobile first development, essentially that is what they're talking about. It's taking that existing process of design something and make it fit on a mobile and flipping it. So design something for a mobile and figure out how then to adapt that for bigger screens and other devices. No code development is something that is quite a growing trend at the moment, and even people that are very capable and have great development and coding knowledge are starting to look more at the no code movement. So basically this is using existing tools to speed up development. So it could be looking at things like looking at existing systems online to power certain parts of the website. It's looking at apps and things that exist to speed up the process of development. And also, if you're a small business and you are looking at things like developing websites or apps, and you're at a point where you only need something basic at this point, you're at early stages and you don't need the added functionality or anything too in depth, there is a lot of no code development tools that allow you to build things like websites and very, very basic apps without coding knowledge. So there's things like Squarespace and lots of others that they may be fairly simple, but if you're looking at a starting point and you're not at a position where you want to be spending, you know, a couple of £1,000 on a website design and build, these are great ways to get started for a monthly fee, get something together that works for you, gets those consumers coming to your brand, gets income coming through, and then you can move further up as the business brand branches out and does more. So no code development, whenever we heard that term, that's what we're talking about. It's removing the coding aspects of development and using existing tools to speed it up. Cross-platform development is exactly as it sounds. It's developing something with the intent, knowing that it will need to work across multiple platforms. So whether that is, if you are developing a software, does it work on Mac and Windows? If you are designing an app for a phone, will it work for iPhone? Will it work for Android? Will it work for any other devices it needs to work on? So this is actually just a must now. Everything kind of needs to work on most platforms if you really want it to work, because people are really varied in how they access data nowadays. So cross-platform development is basically making sure that it works across all devices and platforms needed. And tech ecosystems, we've already discussed that. So that is the tools and services that wrap around your existing product and how you can use that to increase the value. So those are some of the basic top terms that you may hear. But the next step is the development process. Now, this is where a lot of people can get lost, especially if you're not used to it. Maybe you're working with developers. There's a lot of terms that can be used that can confuse people. And it can seem like a very in-depth process. And if you're a developer yourself, sometimes if you're working on various projects, it's easy to get lost in your own process and where you are. So what we're going to break down here is essentially a very basic 5-step process that almost all development teams will kind of work to, whether it's intentionally or if it's just intuitively, they kind of just follow that. This is a basic process that you can follow and gain some further understanding of that process. So this is what we call the sprint process. So this is a process that was actually really put forward by Google. So their team used this as a way to develop innovation. And it's been adapted in various forms. But essentially, most projects will follow this process in some way and follow these 5 key steps. So the 5 key steps, first we start with insight and stimulus. So this is essentially understanding the knowledge and the insights and the trends that will inform what your product will be, so what the ideation will be. So in the scenario that we've just gone through, that would be identifying the consumer needs and looking at the different types of innovation. So the insight would be that consumer need. That is the insight you've gained that you need to address, whether it's a pain point, whether it's a want that the consumer may have. That is an insight to inform your process. The stimulus is essentially inspiration. So it's the type of innovation you are using that is going to give you the inspiration to develop that product. Once you have those two things, we go to ideation. So this is, as the name would suggest, throwing out all those ideas, thinking of all the different ways you could address that consumer need using innovation, using digital services. So you can throw out as many ideas as possible. And then once you've done that, a selection process is done. So that is then selecting the ideas, maybe just one idea, maybe one or two. So you've got fallback ideas that you think are the correct ones to address that need and have the best chance of success. A great way to do this is by creating what we call a selection matrix. So you can put down in a column all the things that you think would have value to the consumer and all things that have value and importance to you as a business, and just tick off which of those things each idea has until you find the one that addresses the most things on that matrix. And those are the ideas that are worth running with. Then the next step, and this is where we start getting to sort of the technical language if you're not used to this kind of process, is wireframing and prototyping. So when we talk about a wireframe, that's essentially mapping out what it may look like, how it may function. And you can do this in any way. So you could do this in a very simple way by just getting a bit of paper and drawing out the user journey. So they land on this page, they click on this, that takes them to this page. If they click on this, this will happen. That is a basic example of a wireframe. Or it could be kind of line drawings of the layout of what that may look like. But essentially, it's a very basic overview of what the product may look like. And then we develop a prototype, or what we sometimes call the MVP, which is a minimum viable product. So this is developing something that is just enough to show your users, your stakeholders, what that product may do, what that service may do, and showcase the value of it. And this is normally a very early stage build if it's an app or a website, or it could just be a video or some form of mock-up to see how that process would work. Something that essentially shows enough to show the minimum values that product or service will give to a consumer. And then from that, we can then test it and see what people's reactions are, see if it's any good, and either launch or rework. So when we rework, essentially, we kind of go back in a cycle and go back to a different step within that process. So for example, if the prototype just wasn't good enough to get the values across, maybe we'll go from test and go back to prototype. If we think the idea wasn't good enough, maybe we can go back to selection and pick another one. If maybe we think the insight and stimulus wasn't taken into account enough, we can go back to ideation and so on. So this is the standard process for most people in development. So if you are working with developers, this hopefully gives you an idea of the different steps that would be followed, or steps that you may want to suggest yourself to help create a bit of a framework for that development. If you are a developer, then this is the standard process, although it may be built out on. This is the standard process that most tech companies and developers are using. And like I said, this is something that Google put across and have kind of championed, and a lot of companies are now starting to work in this manner. And the other thing to consider is that a launch of a product is not always the end point. So when a product is released, consumers are always wanting more from digital services now. So what you'll see is you'll download an app normally in its early stages, in its MVP stage, as we mentioned earlier. But that is just to get people to buy into that. Then from there, additional features and services can be added and can be built upon. So really, this process is just to get that first iteration of your service or product. So it doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing. And also, if you consume, it's worth bearing in mind that sometimes when you buy into technology that's new, it is an MVP, so it's its infancy stage, and it will develop and will grow. So a lot of times people buy into a technology in its infancy, maybe see features that are missing and determine it's not good enough for them. Where actually, normally if it's a new product, you can actually be part of that feedback process. You can actually provide that as feedback and help them grow that product and show them what is valuable to you. And the so the next thing to consider is essentially how to bring all this together. So I've kind of already explained about how to bring all this together so that you have essentially a framework for digital success, whether that's in adopting digital or developing your own. So at Adedic, we essentially created a process for this, which is a lot more in depth, which we call the EVE methodology. But today what I'm going to just break down the very basics of this, which is these 3 squares at the top, and go through essentially how all the things we've spoken about today apply to developing a digital business, understanding a digital business, or just understanding digital products. So we break companies down into essentially 3 sections. And if you imagine a company like a tree, then essentially the roots of the company are the foundations that create the company, are the things that need to be in place for that company to function. So this could be the profit model, it could be the way that you develop the service, it could be the way that you manufacture what it is that you're doing. So it's kind of the core of the business, the roots of the business. The core is the product that you're offering, and the outreach is the way that you're getting that to consumers. So the roots in this case would be the digital infrastructure. So it would be the anatomy of that digital products that we spoke about. Core would be taking one of those consumer needs and applying a bit of digital innovation to it to essentially create a product or service, and running through the sprint process to develop what that is. And outreach is how you get that out to consumers. So as we mentioned earlier, this would be the beta boards and the things like that to get your early adopters in. So that's essentially what we've gone through today. That is the very top level view of a digital service, how to develop one or how to understand one. Now we're going to go through some support options and what we can do that is a little bit more tailored to your business or to your needs.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I'm just conscious we've literally just got a couple of minutes left, so I'm just gonna blast through this. But I hope this has been helpful. As I said at the start, all of the information we're giving there really is quite top level, but we're sort of blasting through in what we can in 90 minutes. So if you've got any questions at the moment, feel free to fire a question over in the Q&A box, and we'll try and answer these for you. But in terms of direct support, where we can apply some of the thinking we've talked about today. There's actually an initiative that's being run by Digital Tech Cumbria, which is to support businesses in the area. And really, this is ultimately all about one-to-one support. So you would have a consultant that would come and work you, maybe like someone from us, like Adenic. There's a whole range of consultants working on the project. It's all completely free of charge. It's funded and completely funded, European funded. And it's worth up to about £5,000 per business, depending on how much of the support you take on. But ultimately, the whole purpose of it is for us to come and work with you on a one-to-one basis to help you firstly understand your current digital capabilities and what you're using at the moment, how you approach digital. Do you use it at all? Is it helping you? And then using that information, we can then work with you directly through like a workshop process to help you apply digital technology and digital solutions to either tackle pain points in the business, barriers that you're facing, make the business easier to run, make it cheaper, lower costs, or to grow the business, to open new revenue streams, get new customers, release new products. All of this would come across from a digital point of view. So we would try and suggest digital tools that are out there for you to adopt to help you to do this. You need to be part of it. You need to be an SME in Cumbria, basically you have to just submit an expression of interest. And when you do that, the team can contact you and they can set that up to arrange for a consultant to start working with you. But some of the stuff that's included, as I say, is firstly working through your business to understand what you're currently doing in terms of digital, and then working with you to grow that and adapt and adopt more digital solutions to do more with the business. But it also has a digital skills academy, which includes like things like this webinars, but masterclasses that help you understand very specific areas of digital that you might not be up here with. There's exemplar visits, so these are best practice visits to like other businesses that have adopted different digital solutions to help their business, and you can go and see what they've done and how that works. Obviously, it'll be done a little bit differently at the moment because of the whole COVID thing, but that's one of the things in there. Technology showcases, these are things where we show you very specific pieces of technology and show you how it's been used and how it can be adopted. And lots of other access to funding and other resources and training. So there's loads of stuff that's involved in it, but really you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain because it's completely free. And you know, the whole point of this this webinar is to say that digital technology is fundamentally part of our lives and it's fundamentally part of business. And if you're not adopting it and you're not embracing that, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're at very real risk of not being able to continue your business or not be able to grow it as well as you might be able to with digital. So the more information you can get on this and the more that you can open up new solutions coming into your business and changing the way that you think about it, the more chance you have of wider success and growth. So there's the details on the screen. If you actually have a look in the chat box at the bottom, I've actually posted the link earlier on today when we started the webinar, so you can copy that that link digital browser and you can register your interest there. Or you can ring the telephone number on the top there, as you can see, or email the Winning Moves email, digitalcumbria@winningmoves.com. So there's all the information. Just before we wrap up, I'd appreciate it if you could just take 30 seconds just to answer the poll that I've just posted. The feedback poll really is just to help us understand the nature of the webinars that are being delivered, and if you're getting information that you need from it, or you know, if they're adding value to what you need to know as a business, and then it helps us tailor them and tailor the types of subjects we speak about. So if you could just take 30 seconds just to answer that poll, that would be really appreciated. And then I'll leave those details on the screen so you can have a screenshot of them or put them into your web browser or put it into your phone or whatever you want to do. And I would welcome you to get in contact. If you're a business in Cumbria, get in contact, register your interest. As I say, it's completely free of charge, and we can spend one-to-one tailored support with your business, understanding what you do, understanding where you're at now, and help you develop new ideas and new solutions and new digital solutions, new digital technology to help grow and drive your business forward, and hopefully take you to a whole new space. I hope that's been helpful. Thank you to Jamie for taking us through that. Jamie, much appreciated. And I'll leave the details on the screen for now, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Until then, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.